My name is Bareket. I am a multidisciplinary artist and a cultural producer and curator working in Toronto. My tour was about public art in the village and thinking about both the history of the art, the current life of the art, and what we can learn from engaging with public art. I'm hugely involved in public art, both as a creator and as a producer. In addition to painting my own murals, I run an initiative called Women Paint, and I've produced 100 murals across the city through that. And I work with different organizations around the city producing murals. The Button Project was created in 2013 as part of the Church Street Mural Project. It's the real world addition to a digital project which has created a collection of pins documenting a wide variety of events and movements that have been part of the history of the village. This mural reminds me that there are so many intersecting histories that make up the history of any one place or community. I love this mural because it offers such a diverse group of people an invitation into that history and a place to start exploring what those intersections look like, both thematically and across time. Pride Tiger was created in 2020 after the first lockdown. I was part of an initiative to welcome people back into the village and to remind us that this is a safe space for us after we had had a lot of messaging telling us that being in shared space was unsafe. June chose the tiger because it's such a prominent character in Korean folklore and has traditionally represented protection against disaster and agony. She felt that in that moment, as we were emerging from the first wave of COVID lockdowns, isolation, and trying to integrate into our reality what had happened, that this was a beautiful symbol for the ways in which we could move forward together with strength and with support for one another. This is another mural that was created in 2013 as part of the Church Street Mural Project. The artist created this piece as a celebration of the history and involvement of the South Asian community within the village. The idea behind the design is that each of the bands is referencing a textiles becoming a metaphor for the way in which the fabric is strengthened by every warp and weft that weaves it together. So it's not one specific institution or person that's building this strong community, but rather the way in which we weave together to create that fabric that's holding us. It Takes a Village is a celebration of joy and an invitation using different phrases to remember that the village is a place that welcomes everybody and that encourages us to live our authentic lives. The really vibrant colors are so uplifting, and this piece was created in 2020 again, after emerging from that first period of lockdown. Those colors were so helpful in elevating mood and reminding us that there is space for joy, even alongside moments that feel really challenging. My favorite part of the mural is the panel which says, "Don't quit your daydream." I love it so much because I think so often we minimize daydreaming as a luxury or as a waste of time. But for me, daydreaming and exploring the world of imagination is so critical to creating the future that we want. Because if it doesn't exist and we don't invest in dreaming it, then it's very unlikely that it will come into being. So through that process of daydreaming, we're actually participating in the creation of a new reality and building a world that reflects the world that we want to live in. Rainbow Lodge is a celebration of the relationships between healing and nature. And the sign depicts a sweat lodge surrounded by a rainbow of medicines, resting on the ground with a night sky in the background. And the sign is welcoming to Two-Spirit folks who attend the Two-Spirit Healing Circle, which happens every week in this space. The inclusion of both the rainbow of medicines and the trans stars are meant to remind us that when we see ourselves as part of nature, we know that everybody belongs. I know Mo and Sean through many years of working together on different mural projects. I met Mo the first year that I ran Women Paint. I invited them to participate. And since then, I've had the privilege of inviting them to participate in a number of different projects or to be the producer of projects that they've painted as part of. I actually met Sean through my high school best friend. And we started talking about art and about being artists and the artist journey. And I had an opportunity quite soon after to curate a series of 5 public art installations. And I invited Sean to collaborate with me on one of them and to create one of them on their own. And also since then, I've had the chance to produce a number of other murals that Sean has created. Power is referencing the experience of navigating the world in a feminized body through the lens of Haudenosaunee culture. Women are often thought of as water keepers and men as fire keepers. And this piece is asking questions about how to navigate that binary. And the cedar log is representing an aid which can allow for moving back and forth across the spectrum rather than holding people in binaries. Originally, the character in the mural was wearing a mask. And the reason behind that was to communicate that a mask does not dull your power. That during this time in the early phase of the pandemic, when there was a lot of discussion about masking and masking was becoming quite politicized, this was a conscious choice to show that wearing a mask would not diminish your power. A year later, Rowan returned to do some touch-ups on the mural and decided to remove the mask as a statement about the progression of time and the ways in which our circumstances had changed from the moment that the mural had been created. Be Strong, Be Kind, Be You is one of my favorite pieces in the village. It has such a joyful and a warm vibe about it and invites everybody into their authenticity. And this character, who is a merging of a human and a plant, is such a wonderful reminder that we aren't separate from nature and that we are best served when we acknowledge our interconnection and interdependence with all living beings. It's so encouraging to choose kindness over aggression. And I feel that in the period where we re-emerged from our isolation, a lot of people were feeling really challenged about how to be in shared spaces. And we had been pushed fear messaging for so long around other humans being dangerous that many people developed some discomfort being around other people. And so often I think that fear manifests as unkindness. So the invitation back into kindness is an invitation back into community. It's an invitation back to ourselves. It's an invitation back to love, which will allow all of us to continue healing as we process everything that's happened over the last few years and our whole lives. Remembering Sarah Higazi was created on the 1-year anniversary of the death of Sarah Higazi. Sarah was an activist, an artist, a writer, and an LGBTQ person. They were arrested in Egypt for flying a pride flag at a concert and subsequently tortured in prison. They were eventually granted asylum in Toronto and moved here and continued their work as an activist and a poet and a writer. Unfortunately, they weren't able to receive the support that they needed during the extremely challenging time in their life following this trauma, and with the addition of the new trauma of isolation, and they took their life. And the mural is a celebration of their life and a celebration of their work and a tribute not only to Sarah but to activists, and a recognition that we must work towards providing mental health support for everybody in our communities, and especially for those people who are working to make our community safer for all of us, and in doing that, making their own lives less safe. I think this mural and this story speaks so strongly to the ways in which so many aspects of our lives exist as contradictions at the same time. That life is both beautiful and tragic. Its stories are both uplifting and devastating. Things are both beautiful and confronting. This mural is such a powerful way to think about how so much of our life exists in that duality. And it's an invitation to think about how we can hold both things at the same time to truly understand what it is to be alive. Full Spectrum was created in 2013 as part of the World Pride celebration. The piece is viewed differently depending on how you approach it. So if you approach it moving west, you see a rainbow of 102 colors creating this beautiful rainbow spectrum celebrating the queer community and the vibrancy and diversity within it. If you approach the piece moving east, you see a dark image which has twinkling lights in it. And this is a tribute to the many candlelight vigils that were held during the AIDS crisis to mourn the tragic loss of so much life. This piece as well speaks so strongly to this idea of duality, that at the same time, this community can be so vibrant and colorful and bold and beautiful, and also have this history of loss and trauma and deep difficulty. The piece is a physical invitation to think about the fact that our perspective creates our reality, and the way in which we are looking at something is so much of the way we understand what is happening before us. And I think it's a beautiful invitation to remind ourselves to look at things through as many perspectives as we can if we want to try to understand the wholeness of what we're interacting with. In thinking about the status of the plaque, I think it's up to the artists and the curators to think about what experience it is that they want to create for viewers. Having a plaque allows perhaps many more people to engage with that history and to engage with the multiple layers of themes that the piece is sharing. Leaving it without a plaque allows space for people to create their own meaning around the piece. And both of those can be really rich ways to share art. And I would leave it up to the artists and the curators to think about which experience is the experience that they're hoping to create for viewers. Yeah. This is another piece that was created as part of the 2013 Church Street Mural project. This piece celebrates performers who were so fundamental in building the cultural legacy that continues to this day in the village. And each of the specific people who are depicted, and all of the portraits are based on real people, were selected because they were involved formally or informally as mentors. And they made a big part of their practice sharing their knowledge and their skills with the next generation of artists. So the mural is not only celebrating the importance of these folks who were such powerful artists, but also the importance of mentorship and community within artistic creation, and the ways in which each of us can take on that responsibility to ensure that we're supporting the next generation of people, and that we're using our platform to elevate others as we do the work we love to do. Mm-hmm. The way that the mural covers the entire building transforms the building so that you're much less focused on the architecture, and you are so drawn into the colors and the shapes and Elixir's specific style, painterly style that's quite loose and almost dreamy. It makes the building this meeting point, a landmark, a place that's so easy to tell people to look for. This piece is a celebration of queer ecology through the lens of mushrooms. It's such a playful piece, and I love this use of mushrooms as a metaphor for the strength of difference within the mushroom world. There are so many different ways that mycelial hyphae can mate with each other and form new networks. And that feels like such a powerful metaphor for humans to learn from. We can think about hugely expanding our sense of what it means to be a family, of the ways in which we can build our networks through family or through relationship with each other. It's an invitation to celebrate thinking outside of the binary. One of the big things that I took away from the tour was how important it is to talk about what we're seeing with other people. Even after having done research about each of these pieces, on every tour, there was somebody in the group who had something to add that enriched my understanding and everybody's understanding of what we were looking at, whether that was through personal anecdote, having had a relationship with the village perhaps before I was even born. That exchange of information adds so much richness to the experience of public art. There were so many times at the end of the tour that people would say, "Oh gosh, I've seen this 100 times and I never knew the meaning. And now that I do, I feel so much more connected to my neighborhood and to the place that I live." One of the things that I think is so powerful about public art is that it allows us to tell these stories about the place that we're living, about our relationship to the place that we're living, or about somebody else's relationship to that place. And the more that we can become familiar with both the artworks and other people's experiences of those artworks, the deeper we can understand how we fit into this incredible network of humans and life and stories that's constantly unfolding around us. I personally feel that the richer our understanding of ourselves and how we fit in, the more we can contribute to other people.